I'm Anthony Romano, and this video is on how there are only two kinds of fat loss diets, and once you understand this, you will understand the key to losing body fat better than ever in your life. Before I do that though, like this video, subscribe, follow my Instagram, and go to my website for personal coaching and programs, books, all that other stuff, and merchandise. Alright, let's jump into this, okay? If you know my videos, you know I love keto. You know I've been doing keto for 8 years, and you know that I believe there's more to fat loss than simply calories in, calories out. But I'm going to explain this topic to you here, and keep in mind, just because I'm a keto guy doesn't mean you have to do keto, but I'm going to explain to you the two kinds of diets. Number one, a ketogenic diet. Number two, a non-ketogenic diet. There are simply no other metabolic states your body can be in, okay? You either have fat as fuel or carbs as fuel. That's it. So there's only two kinds of diets, ones that either put you in a keto state or ones that keep you in a carb state. That is it. So ideally, when you're trying to lose body fat, of course it's better if your body is better at using fats, right? Inherent point to keto there. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that there are tools that merge these two approaches together, but I'll get into those. So the problem I have with most fat loss diets nowadays is that they only focus on the quantity. They only focus on the net overarching view of your energy intake. That's it. They only look at total calories in, calories out, and the rest doesn't really matter from there, bro. That's not true. Okay, that's one side of the coin, and there's two sides to every coin. You can either look at the total amount of food you're taking in, the total amount of energy, the total amount of demand that might create for fat to be used, body stored energy to be used, right? But it doesn't focus on the quality of the foods themselves. So what do I mean by that? When you do a ketogenic diet or you cut out carbs, you're cutting out the foods that have the highest propensity to make you store fat. Why is that? Well, carbs aren't necessarily the devil, but they do spike your insulin, okay? They're the foods that create the largest insulin spike out of every other macro, okay? So when we're looking at the quality of the food themselves, and we're looking at the fat storage hormone insulin, you either have the approach of quantity, where you lower the total amount of food you're eating and thereby lower the total amount of insulin because you're reducing the amount of total food you're eating, or you don't necessarily reduce the total amount of food, but you lower the amount of food that's going to cause fat storage specifically. So, hopefully you understand that. You have the quantitative and the qualitative. Keto being the qualitative, and calories/carb diets being the quantitative. So if insulin is the currency of fat loss because it is the fat storage hormone, you either reduce it by cutting out the foods that spike it the most, foods that have the quality of raising the fat storage hormone, right, carbohydrates, or you simply don't differentiate, but you lower all your intake of food. So realistically, 3,000 calories a day dropping to 2,000 calories a day is going to mean less insulin, regardless of if you change your macros or not. So 50% carbs at 3,000 calories is now a lower total amount of carbs at 50% of 2,000 calories, right? So your insulin is still lower, but you focus on the quantity rather than if you cut the carbs out altogether, you can still eat in an energy surplus by a little bit at first. And because your fat storage hormone is so diminished, your body does not have any barriers to using its own body fat. So eventually, both of these paths are going to hit a wall. Okay, so I'm not just telling you keto is better because it reduces your insulin and that's going to make you burn body fat while you're able to eat lots of food and not be, starving and wanting to kill yourself. Okay, that's not what I'm saying, even though I love keto and I just obviously made a biased argument for it there. But the point is, I've done all those diets, and the quantitative diets, the calorie diets, they suck. But that's not what I'm saying yet. What I'm saying here is, even if you take the keto diet and you do it with a calorie surplus, at the start, you're going to lose body fat if you're new to it. But eventually, you're going to get to a point where your body reaches an equilibrium, where the amount of lowered insulin kind of hits a homeostasis point. So now, because you're eating foods that are less likely to spike insulin, right? But fats are very high calorie. So eventually, you're going to get to a point where you hit a plateau because you're only focusing on the qualitative element of the foods. You're not focusing on the total quantity. So eventually you get to a point where you're focusing so much on the quality that the quantity is what messes up your results. When we look over at the quantitative side, okay, the calorie side, you're going to get to a point where you are eating so few calories that you have to do endless amounts of cardio, you have to go to bed on an empty stomach, and you're starving, you're biting your ankles off, as I always say, because you're so damn hungry because your insulin's jacked up, but your energy demand is high because your calories are low. So you push the quantitative button so far that your body needs a hormonal change to pass the plateau. How do you create that hormonal change? People do it by doing extra cardio. People do it by having less calories total because their insulin's still high, and it's gotten to a point where, you can eat 1,000 calories less every day, but eventually your body's going to hit homeostasis. And after that homeostasis point, the only way to push through is to lower your insulin, because 2,000 calories a day of 50% carb created an initial insulin drop, but now it's not sufficient anymore to permit fat mobilization, which I could get into, but I'm not going to get into. But basically, on both sides of the spectrum here, we have pushing the quality, only focusing on quality. Eventually, the way you have to break through it is by lowering the calories a bit. And only focusing on the quantity, the way you have to do it is by lowering the carbs a bit. Because you have to lower the quality of food that is most likely to store fat. And this is why people who always do these flexible diets, they inevitably have to drop the carbs low. It's like you're inevitably going to have to push towards a keto diet. So why not just start with it in the first place? Because you're going to have a much easier time burning fat, and you're not going to go to sleep hungry. You're not going to be starving and salivating every time you see a donut. Okay, you actually won't. You look at donuts like they're plastic when you're on keto, which is why I love keto so much and why I've been doing it for so long, because I ditched the calorie diets. They sucked. And you're always hungry, and you always have to push low carb without going keto. So here's the thing. There's two kinds of fat loss diets. There's ketogenic and non-ketogenic. And let's go full circle here. When your body is on a carb metabolism, but you're not quite ketogenic, so you're very low carb, but you haven't made the carbs low enough to the point where your body switches to keto states, okay? What you're doing is you're keeping your body on a carb metabolism, but you're not allowing it to tap into fat. So, essentially, you're giving your body, you're saying, okay, guys, we're doing carbs here. We're keeping the energy system carbs. But you're giving it a very small amount of carbs. When you're on a keto metabolism, you cut the carbs out completely. So your body says, oh shit, there's no carbs here. This is going to suck for the first few days, right? 3 days particularly. But after that, your body gets used to things and it hops into ketosis. So essentially, point here is that your body doesn't care what metabolic state it's in for the time being, as long as you give it enough energy. And the nature of a fat metabolism is that you have shitloads of fat. You have an abundance amount of body fat, but the first few days when you're transitioning from carbs, it sucks. When you're on the carb metabolism, as long as you have enough carbs, you're set. The only thing is the body can only store 2,000 calories worth of carbs, and if you're underfeeding it, it does not have the abundance of body fat. They're two yin-yang, diametrically opposing states. So, essentially, when it comes to what fat loss diet you should do, I always recommend keto, and I think it's the best, most sustainable way, because you're naturally going to be less hungry, and you will eventually find it way easier to make that quantitative adjustment of lowering the calories a bit. And you can still get away with the first few months of not even counting calories. But keep in mind, if you have a deadline, it's always best to count calories. But the point is, you got to grab the bull by both of the horns. You can't just focus on one. You can start off with a carb diet and count your calories because you think that's going to be more sustainable. But I'm telling you, if you put up with 3 days of, being hungry and a little bit tired and start off with keto, things are going to be way easier for you down the line. It's better to start off 3 days of, feeling fatigued with keto and being able to handle it properly by eating as much keto food as you want than to have to get to that point when you're on a carb metabolism and you're 10 pounds away from shredded, but you have to lower your carbs and you feel like shit. Do not go into the gray zone. Do not keep your body on a carb metabolism, but just give it low carbs. Do not do that. You have to get them low enough to the point where you switch over. And that is the number one mistake I see with people on ketogenic diets or on carb diets. They go very low carb, but they don't allow their body to hop into ketosis. So the tool for you is to marry the two, okay? And once you do that, you're going to find the best fat loss results of your life. And although I recommend you start off with keto first, theoretically, even if you wanted to start off with a calorie carb diet, you could. And then eventually, if you hop to ketosis, things are going to be way easier. It's just that it would be easier to start keto from the beginning. So that is it for this video, okay? If you want me to play out the scenario in a more confusing way, I'm not going to play out the rest of the scenario. That's the chapter 1 to this 2 types of fat loss diets, okay? Watch my other videos if you want more information on these things, and hit me up on Instagram. Follow this YouTube, follow my Instagram, and like this video. That is it. Peace.